Hey, welcome everyone to The Gamer. Today we will be talking about reboots and which video games are in desperate need of one. We define reboot in this video pretty broadly. We will include possible HD remastered versions of games, long overdue sequels, and complete top-to-bottom remakes of gameplay and story. Sort of like how the upcoming Call of Duty Modern Warfare is a reboot of the old 2007 Modern Warfare, which was a reboot of the Call of Duty franchise. Rebootception. Massive spoiler warning! Let's begin! Mass Effect. The first three Mass Effect games contained some of the most brilliant storytelling in modern gaming. Set in a distant future where humans are inducted into the larger galactic community, it tells the story of Commander Shepard, a leader who can either be benevolent or self-serving depending on the player's choices. The series, developed by BioWare, took inspiration from classic science fiction like Star Trek and Battlestar Galactica. Mass Effect took notes from artists such as Sid Mead, who also influenced Blade Runner. With a mythos so tied to great sci-fi, it's a shame that the franchise went out with such a whimper. The ending of Mass Effect 3 left a sour taste in fans' mouths, ignoring years of character building and moral choices by offering up three basic cookie-cutter endings. What's just as disappointing is the sequel Andromeda. This game felt like a downgrade in every possible way, from the writing all the way down to the derpy character faces. This franchise has a beautiful mythos and should be given a brand new shot with a more talented team. And no meddling by Electronic Arts, please. Half-Life. Valve's beloved series Half-Life has no life left. Starting with the original title in 1998, the franchise is a first-person shooter ripe with puzzles, engaging stories, and innovative action. Both Half-Life 1 and 2 have been considered some of the greatest video games of all time. Unfortunately, Valve has a reputation for its unorthodox managerial approach. What that means is that they take too dang long to finish a game. Did you know Half-Life 2 spent 6 whole years in development before being released in 2004? To alleviate this huge gap, Valve head Gabe Newell decided to make the franchise episodic. This was supposed to make things go quicker. Supposed to, as in it didn't. Half-Life 2 Episode 1 released in 2006, and Episode 2 popped out just a year later in 2007. And then, well, it's 2019 and there's been nothing. The lead writers of Half-Life and Portal left in 2016 and 2017. And that has led many to believe that that is the end to all hopes of an Episode 3 or Half-Life 3. We can't be the only ones who still want to know the full story. Super Mario Sunshine. If you've followed us here on The Gamer, you know we love talking about Mario, and for good reason. The chubby plumber has had a great many fun adventures to call his own, with Super Mario Sunshine being a standout. Pushing the GameCube to its limits, the 2002 game brought us to a set of tropical islands. There you could surf the waves, explore a haunted hotel, and platform your way through several amazing towns. When we were kids, it looked stunning. All the bright colors, the water seemed so real. Oh, and the goop covered Mario when he stepped in it. But we take a look back at the game, and now to be perfectly honest, it looks pretty dated. Which is understandable, as Sunshine is over 15 years old. If it just had an HD remake of some kind on a new Nintendo console, that would be awesome. We are not trying to nudge any particular company or anything about a specific console called the Switch, and how its graphics capabilities are more than enough to revamp this Mario franchise. No, not saying that at all. Not at all. Banjo-Kazooie. Rare Software, the super creative team behind many Nintendo classics, is stuck at Microsoft. Upon jumping ship, the Banjo-Kazooie franchise went along with them. Banjo was an influential 3D platformer from the late 90s that took many of the standards set by Super Mario 64 and cranked the dial to 11. The series excelled in its collect-a-thon attitude, encouraging players to snag every single floating item dangling around the game maps. After the release of Banjo-Tooie, the N64 sequel, fans were all pumped up for what other adventures Rare Software would give them. As we said, however, the developers packed up and headed west to Bill Gates Land. And in Bill Gates Land, there was no room for Banjo. That's right, Microsoft sat on this intellectual property for 80 years until they figured it was time for a new one. And out came Nuts and Bolts, a subpar Banjo game about building cars and planes. It felt like it was simultaneously preying on nostalgia with one hand and insulting the players for having that nostalgia with the other. Just recently, Banjo-Kazooie finally made it to Smash Bros. So maybe, just maybe, this could prompt Microsoft to develop a reboot that feels like an actual Banjo game. Metroid. The Metroid series is in painful, dire need of a reboot. Starring one of gaming's most well-known female protagonists, the franchise had its beginnings on the NES in 1986. With a dark atmosphere akin to Alien, Metroid started off its first few installments with non-linear platforming through caves and research stations. Samus could do everything from shooting missiles to running through walls to freezing enemies in their tracks. But by the turn of the century, it was clear they needed a reboot, hence 2002's Metroid Prime was born. The Prime franchise turned the game into a first-person shooter with a high focus on exploration and puzzles. It was a drastic successful change, and Metroid Prime gained 2 sequels and a Nintendo DS spin-off, Metroid Prime Hunters. It also got a pinball game, in case, that was something you were into. Then 2010's Other M happened, which was not a great Metroid game. And then Silence. Then 2016's Federation Force came out and fans were disappointed again. And then the upcoming Metroid Prime 4 got delayed. If any franchise needs a clean slate, it's this one. Silent Hill. Oh, Silent Hill, look how far you've fallen. You once struck fear into the hearts of preteens everywhere, showing up in our TV screens and movie screens. You were on top of the world in the early 2000s, and now look at you. A sad shadow of past glory and the bitter taste of what could have been. The first 4 Silent Hill games were developed by Team Silent and centered around carefully thought-out psychological horror. The games revolved around the haunted American town of Silent Hill. In some titles, the place is overrun by cultists, and in others, it's a multi-dimensional David Lynch-esque plane of existence where all your inner demons come alive. After the 2006 movie, things moved downhill from there. Team Silent's owner, Konami, decreed that Silent Hill games should be made in the West, so poof, Team Silent was erased. The next few installments up to 2012 ranged from meh to oh god, please stop, just please stop it. Hideo Kojima's planned reboot, Silent Hills, ended disastrously when the war with Konami ended with Kojima leaving the company. We propose a reboot without Konami. Chrono. A JRPG considered one of the greatest games of all time, Chrono Trigger was released all the way back in 1995 on the Super Nintendo. It followed a dense time-traveling story in which a kid named Chrono hops through the past to find the key to save an apocalyptic future. It was brought together by developers who worked on Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, including Akira Toriyama, the illustrator of Dragon Ball. The series spawned one sequel in 1999 for the PlayStation. Chrono Cross was also an excellent game, receiving high marks from nearly every game reviewer at the time. It gave the player a whopping 45 party members to choose from and involved alternate dimensions. A third game called Chrono Break was reportedly in the works, as a trademark for the name was picked up. But for an unknown reason, Square eventually dropped the trademark in 2003. Folks, we deserve a reboot for this franchise. Its dimension hopping and time travel stories are unique and must be encouraged in the gaming industry. Conker. Another forgotten rare property, the Conker franchise begins with the titular hero first appearing in Diddy Kong Racing on the Nintendo 64. He eventually got his own main game with Conker's Bad Fur Day. This was not for kids. Conker is an alcoholic, greedy squirrel with a very weird accent that sounds like a mix between British and New Yorker. This game was great because it was a 3D Nintendo platformer that broke all the conventions and rules of the last couple of years. There was graphic violence, vulgar language, overt references to films like The Matrix, and even, innuendos. After Microsoft assumed control of Rare, a remake was released in 2005 called Conker Live and Reloaded. In true Microsoft fashion, a multiplayer mode was added to the game. And that's about it for Conker. He hasn't really had another game to call his own for the longest time. Being a primarily satirical franchise, we would love to see modern gaming get skewered on microtransactions, mobile games, and several re-releases of the same game. Conker is the rodent to do it, if only they'd let him. Bully. Rockstar is pretty much known for 3 franchises: Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead Redemption, and Max Payne. But you know what? Everyone forgets about the Bully franchise. We guess the main reason is the Bully franchise consists of just one game. A third-person open world, this game takes place in the town of Bulworth and its bully-infested school. Your job in the game is to balance your school life with facing off against multiple jerks once class is over. It plays similarly to Grand Theft Auto, but is massively toned down for a younger audience. Bully received a ton of controversy, actually getting banned from distribution in Brazil for its content supposedly affecting the youth. Which is surprising, given its T for teen rating by the ESRB. We wonder what the game would have looked like if they changed Bully's content specifically for Brazil. While we don't have a video dedicated to just that, we do have a video you should check out about censorship in gaming. It's called 10 Video Games That Look Different in Other Countries. Either way, the game was extremely fun and is only now getting little rumors here and there that Rockstar is interested in the Bully series once again. Now that Red Dead Redemption 2 is done and GTA 5 is still going strong, why not bring back the old PS2 classic? Bonus round: Street Fighter. The Street Fighter series is one of the biggest fighting game series of all time. Starting in 1987, they have morphed and grown over the years to include spin-off titles like Final Fight and Marvel vs. Capcom. Sometimes a franchise like Street Fighter begins to feel its own weight. The story of the franchise has become ridiculous and convoluted. Certain games will even give themselves a reboot. For example, Street Fighter V released in 2016 to mixed reviews due to the lack of content that you could usually find in the franchise. 2 years later, Street Fighter V Arcade Edition was released, which addressed all the flaws of its previous version. It was received more positively, but what a hole to have to dig yourself out of, huh? We say just reboot the whole thing. Start back to square one with the original cast and setting of the original game. Take a cue from the Mortal Kombat series, who went so off course from its roots that rebooting everything from top to bottom turned out very well for them. Now everyone's going crazy over Mortal Kombat 11. Please, Capcom, fix the mess that you started with Street Fighter and make it accessible to new players again. LA Noire. This is a reboot wish that will likely never come true. That's because the company that created LA Noire, Team Bondi, is gone, mainly due to mismanagement and worker abuse. But instead of discussing the many failings of Team Bondi, let's talk about what they got right with this game, and why it needs to come back. LA Noire, released in 2011, is a detective open-world action game set in the post-war era of 1940s Los Angeles. The game used state-of-the-art motion capture technology to map out every twitch on an actor's face, so that when you begin asking questions to solve a case, you can read the expressions of the suspects. You can gather evidence and put that against the statements of the witnesses and subtle nonverbal hints that you receive. There were some flaws, however. For instance, the vast open-world city was empty and meaningless to explore. In addition, the combat sequences were awkward and garbagey. A reboot of the franchise would serve to expand on its strengths and improve on its weaknesses. But we are sad to say that this will probably never happen. And that's it for today. What did you think? What games did we miss? Let us know in the comment section below and then give us a like and subscribe. We're releasing videos every couple days, so hit that notification bell to get notified every time a new one arrives. Don't forget it!